For reaction now, let's bring in the president of the Indianapolis Fraternal Order of Police, Rick Snyder. Rick, welcome back to National Report. Weigh in, if you could, about what's happening in New York City, your expectations, especially with this new Manhattan DA and his week on crime policies.
Well, I think it begs the question that every resident of New York, but quite frankly, every resident throughout our country should be having, which is how on earth does this enhance public safety? Listen, the short answer is it does not. In fact, it's a further step in destabilizing the system of justice that we have within our country. It's intentional, it's programmed, and now we have radical politicians who are stepping out of the shadows and exposing themselves for what they are and what they're attempting to do, which is to destabilize our families, our neighborhoods, our communities, and in turn our nation. The question in law enforcement that we are asking is who is behind that and why? It's occurring in every major city, and that's what a lot of folks don't understand yet. They see this specific example in Manhattan, but what I'm here to tell you is that in almost every major city in this nation, this same programmed philosophy is already present through elected or appointed DAs or prosecutors. Here in Indianapolis, we had a prosecutor who refused to enforce a law related to a gun legislation on a red flag law. And as a result, we had what became known as the massacre that occurred at FedEx, in which there was a mass casualty, mass killing that occurred. And it begs this question here and all throughout our country. Can an elected or an appointed official refuse to enforce the law as a matter of practice or policy? That is a question of consequence that has huge ramifications based on the way that we answer that. And it requires that we collectively, as a nation, come together and say, do we support the rule of law, or do we allow elected or appointed officials to evade the will of the people through their elected representatives, through the established laws of their state?
Yeah. Again, part of the DA's plan, no plan, rather, to prosecute several crimes, including resisting arrest, trespassing, and marijuana possession as well. So that's kind of an insight as to what you can expect if you're in New York City, what might not be prosecuted. But you mentioned law enforcement as well, how important it is to support these individuals. It was just recently Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. When you look at these laws, when you look at these district attorneys who are going into place, this new elected leadership here, what advice would you give them when it comes to them showing support for law enforcement?
In 2019, myself and law enforcement representatives from 19 other major cities in the United States met with then President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. And what in the meeting in the White House, we shared with him, we were seeing this on the front lines, this planned, programmed movement by elected and appointed officials to destabilize the criminal justice system in our country. And what we said then, and remains true today, which is there is a proactive steps that are being taken to decriminalize the criminals at the same time to depolice the police. The result is we're seeing the re-victimization of victims, and it's a recipe for disaster. Since that time, we have seen these so-called criminal justice reforms and bail reforms take place at the beginning of 2020 and moving forward. In Indianapolis, our community, we have seen a 59% increase in homicides. We've had back-to-back record levels of homicides in our city, and we've seen that throughout major cities throughout our country. And so what we know is this, is that we have to get a serious handle on this. We're seeing it specifically with district attorneys and prosecutors and activist judges. And the question becomes this, and these, quite frankly, these assistant DAs need to be thinking about. This really falls under what's called Brady v. Maryland, and it will raise the question if these DAs in any future proceedings would need to disclose to the courts that they proactively took steps under this manifesto issued by this politician to mitigate the court's interpretation of the punishment that is deserved by any individual. These are significant questions, and it dilutes the ability of us to protect the blessings bestowed upon us by our Creator for our liberty. And so we need to put victims first, and make clear that victims deserve better. And folks need to come out from the four corners of their homes and from the four corners of their houses of worship and make clear that they are going to contend to protect the constitutional rights that we all have in place.
Yeah, such important points you make. DOJ, just one final headline here, is going to award $1.6 billion to reduce violent crime and strengthen the communities. That came out at the end of 2021. We'll see what happens in 2022. Rick Snyder, thanks so much for joining us today. We do appreciate it.
Thank you and God bless.
Thank you.